you for being here. I'm Bill Elder. I too am a candidate for sheriff. I've lived here my whole life. I grew up here. I've raised my kids here. I'm raising my grandkids here. I started at the sheriff's office in 1978 as a volunteer. I went on patrol in 1979, and I grew up through the patrol division and all of the operations portion. I spent my last 4.5 years as a commander, a lieutenant in Metro Narcotics. Metro Narcotics is a combined CSPD, El Paso County Sheriff's Office unit. While there, we built the unit to the largest Metro Narcotics unit in the state. In 1998, I resigned. I went into real estate, opened a private security firm. We ran that private security firm for a number of years until Quantum Corporation pulled out of the city and moved back to Milpitas, California. We sold the company, but I still run my real estate business today. In 2010, I was given an opportunity to go back into law enforcement, and I'm now the Deputy Chief of Police in Fountain. I've been there 3.5 years. Last year, we decided it was a good idea to start a run to take the office of the sheriff. Terry is term limited, and so we put together a team. And we've been running for a little over a year now. We have several pillars to our campaign. The first is to protect your constitutional rights. That's number one. Not just the Second Amendment. I'm a strong Second Amendment candidate or supporter, but I want to tell you that it's not just for concealed weapons. I support wholeheartedly. You won't see any changes in the current program. But I'm a constitutional carry guy. The Second Amendment of the Constitution, through the Heller decision, says you have the right, the personal right, to keep and bear arms. It doesn't say that you need a permit if you want to wear a coat. It doesn't say you need a permit if you need to put it in your purse. There's been numerous bills run through our legislature saying that we should have the right to carry that firearm because that's what the Constitution says. And I support that. Secondly, I support the Fourth Amendment. You're secure in your person and your property and your papers because of the Fourth Amendment. You should understand that your law enforcement officials can actually quote the Supreme Court definition of probable cause. They understand what it takes to write a search or arrest warrant. They understand what it takes to put somebody's body in custody, to take away their right to freedom. And the Fifth Amendment. You should know that I understand what it means to use the Miranda warning. You should know that I understand your constitutional rights when it comes to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The second thing I want to talk about is collaboration and cooperation amongst our agencies countywide. I think that we can find efficiencies through the reduction of duplication of services through multiple agencies throughout the county. We can draw upon not the law enforcement function, but the support services function that all of the agencies do combined. We want to study the efficiency of combining our comm centers. Is that possible, and does it make sense? We want to talk about the efficiencies of combining training centers. We want to find the efficiencies of combining our evidence facilities. There's lots of things we can do to work together. And the third pillar is, I want an open and transparent office. I want you to know that you can come to us and ask questions. I want you to know that you can come to our office and we will let you see how your money is being spent. I intend to take what is almost a $70 million budget, and I want to conduct an audit. Not because I think that there's been anything wrong at all, but because I want you to know that I care about how $70 million is spent of your money. And I want it to be clear and transparent. I want an opportunity to be your next sheriff. This has been my life. It's not something that I take lightly. It's not something that I just can put away and pack it up on a shelf. I want a chance to run what is essentially the largest sheriff's office in the state and one of the largest law enforcement operations in the state. And I would appreciate your support on the 29th. Thank you.
Bill, good evening. I have a two-part question.
Okay?
First question, do you support collective bargaining?
You're asking, Ahmad is asking, do I support collective bargaining? I mean, it's pretty open-ended. Are you talking about with law enforcement or a specifically? No, I do not support collective bargaining.
Okay, second part of the question. Why is the Police Protective Association underwriting your campaign? What do they expect for all the money they're putting into your campaign?
Ahmad is asking, why is the Police Protective Association underwriting my campaign? What do they expect? The Police Protective Association is a non-union. I know that you want to think it's a union, but they are a non-union entity that is made up of the 800 and some odd members of the Colorado Springs Police Department. They belong to a they contribute to a small donor committee. They believe in the pillars of my campaign. You asked why they support me? I believe they support me because they believe in what I'm trying to do with regional collaboration. Go ahead.
One follow-up. Do you think it's reasonable for an organization to underwrite your campaign so far to the tune of $10,000?
Well, what he's asking is, do I think it's right for an organization to underwrite my campaign to the tune of $10,000? The bottom line is they haven't. It's $6,000. Of the $45,000 we've raised, $6,000 came from the Police Protective Association in 2 contributions. So do I think it's right? That's their contribution to me. I took their contribution. It comes with no strings attached. I don't know what you're driving at.
If I may, $6,000 was reported on your last filing with the Secretary of State's office.
Correct.
Recently, they have taken ads in the Gazette. Full-page ads, very expensive, have to be reported to the Secretary.
Those will be reported, but those have been...
Absolutely. And then there's probably some additional things that they're doing. We're estimating about $10,000. That's where that number comes from.
Okay. So they've taken out 2 ads. That was their decision to take out the ads. We will report those as in-kind contributions. Are you saying that I owe them something for that?
Well, usually the way in our government, people lobby. Organizations lobby.
So if you're making a claim, make a claim.
No, I am.
You saying usually that happens.
I'm not dancing around the claim, Mr. Elder. I'm making the claim straight up.
I'm asking you for, the answer is there are no promises, but if you believe that there's a promise, then make it.
Well, because the fundamental core of the association is they collect dues from members. And those dues are being used to fund your campaign.
That is
What
correct.
does the organization want in exchange?
They have not voiced anything in exchange, period.
Well, I suspect they might want membership of all the deputies in the sheriff's office to join that association where they could have collective bargaining.
They don't have collective bargaining. I don't know why you've said that a couple of times. They are not a union. They do not have collective bargaining rights.
Well, the Police Protective Association has had collective bargaining and influence in the police department in the city of Colorado Springs. Chief Valdez was ousted because of their displeasure. Correct or not?
No.
May I ask that you guys take this after? I know there's other people who want to ask questions, and we want to give everyone
Thank you,
an
Mike.
opportunity.
Okay,
So,
thank you. Sir.
Bill, I'd like to ask the same question I asked to Jim.
Sure.
In those cases where the judiciary has not ruled on points of law, do you believe that the sheriff has the right and the responsibility to interpret the points of law that have not been identified so far by the judiciary?
Has everybody hear the question? Anybody not hear the question? He wants to know if the law has not been interpreted by the judiciary, does the sheriff have the right to do that? We fall back on the Constitution every time. If it's not in the Constitution, if it is still being interpreted by the judiciary, then yes, the sheriff has the power to do that.
Hi. You are sort of familiar with this. My question is, just to give you a brief background, my 16-year-old son tried to exercise his Fourth Amendment rights rightly, and it angered a deputy so much that this deputy followed my son to his place of work and harassed him there. I went to the sheriff's department to try to get an apology or something. I was given nothing. I was told that some of the new deputies are not aware of these amendments. I said, do they or do they not swear an oath to the Constitution? And yes, of course they do. What would be your role in making sure that your deputies know by heart our Constitution and to preserve the rights of the people?
Well, it all comes back to, did everybody hear her question? It all goes back to the Constitution. It all goes back to training on the fundamentals of the Bill of Rights. We watched another video the other day in one of our training sessions where a guy was open carrying walking down the street. Open carrying. And he gets challenged by a law enforcement officer. This was in Seattle. And he gets a shakedown by the cops. They insist on interrupting his ability to open carry. They eventually backed off when they figured out that this kid knew what he was talking about. But the same goes for your son. Insist on your constitutional rights. If there is more to it, and there's probable cause, then they can move on. That's what the Terry decision was about. Terry talks about stop and frisk. You must have reasonable suspicion to stop. You must have probable cause to take the next step. That's the bottom line.
I would like to ask my same question as the sheriff, as our line of defense to tyrannical federal administrative bureaucracies. If the FDA swooped in on a farmer who was selling raw milk because they've decided it's illegal, what would you do?
Well, again, in the Constitution, we have a provision that most people don't pay attention to, and that's called dual sovereignty. And if there's federal overreach, it's up to the state to assume that sovereignty, to step away. It's up to the sheriff to stand in that gap. It's up to the sheriff to slow down the process. So, absolutely. Sir?
It sounds like you've heard of Sheriff Mack and you believe him. Have you? Or?
I've heard of Sheriff Mack. I'm not sure I buy off everything that he talks about, but I have heard of him.
Okay, because on Julie's thing, what if the federals come in the middle of the night and they want to gitmo somebody without an arrest warrant? Because that's what the NDAA basically says.
And the NDAA talks about unreasonable detention as well, and those are the things that we have to stop. I think that part of that goes back to the relationship building that we can have with all of the agencies in the county. They understand that what we will and we won't stand up for. They have to know what we will and we won't stop, and we don't let them do that. When we have a better relationship, we're less apt to have people collide with us. Anybody else? Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.